the woman that made tonight possible. If it weren't for Jess Mears here, I wouldn't be standing here tonight, and none of you would be here. She's a UC alum. She brought Governor Johnson here tonight. And let's give it up for Jess Mears and Gary Johnson.
Thank you, Tommy. Good evening, Cincinnati. How's everybody doing tonight? Awesome. I just want to thank you all for coming out. We are at capacity in this venue. We have overflow room outside, so there's actually people in the Red Stadium watching us on the Jumbotron right now. So can everybody say hi to them? Yeah. So my name is Jess Mears. I'm a graduate of the University of Cincinnati. It gives me great pleasure to be back in the Queen City, a city that I call my home. So let's see who's in the room tonight. Can I get Kentucky people to make some noise? Whoa. Okay, how about Indiana? Okay. All right, and everybody from other states besides Ohio, shout them out. Dang. You guys traveled to get here. Thank you. All right, and how about those Ohioans? You stole my next line. So the biggest Buckeye fan I know is my dad, and he's standing over there. So this one's for him. OH. All right, thanks, everyone. Okay, so over the past couple months, I've traveled for rallies for Governor Gary Johnson and Governor Bill Weld. So just some states that I've been to: Georgia, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, South Dakota, Minnesota, New Mexico, Texas, Florida, and now I'm back in my home state of Ohio. It's been fun. I'm continually moved everywhere I go by the support that this ticket has. And with all the positivity surrounding this campaign, the worst thing that anybody has said to me is that Gary Johnson can't win. Yeah. Right? So, in response to that, I steal this line from Donald Trump and tell them, wrong. Gary Johnson can win, and in my opinion, we have already won. By rejecting the status quo and voting third party this year, American politics will never be the same. The two-party system has failed this country. Just look at the attack ads, the rhetoric on TV, and it's abundantly clear that it's time for real and positive change. This is the year that the two-party system will be dismantled. And to this, we owe gratitude to Governor Gary Johnson. So how many millennials do we have here tonight? Did you know that Gary Johnson is the choice among millennial voters? I asked the generations that came before mine to look at our choices this year. My generation, the millennial generation, we want more peace and less wars. We want less hate and more love. And we want free markets so that our young and our intelligent and creative minds can flourish in the business place. Doesn't this sound like a great future for America? Governors Gary Johnson and Bill Weld are the only ticket on the ballot in all 50 states, all 50, that can make this happen. And this is the direction that the millennials want. So take a look at the millennials when you vote this year. So we're in a baseball stadium tonight, so we have to talk about the World Series for a moment. Okay, so if you asked anybody at the beginning of the baseball season and asked if the Cleveland Indians were going to be in the World Series, what would they have said? Yeah. The Indians haven't won a World Series championship since 1948. That was 68 years ago. And in those 68 years, did the Indians fans give up? No. They kept coming out to the ballpark year after year, supporting their team, and always hopeful that they'd make it. And this year, they have. They're in the World Series this year. So for us in the Liberty Movement that want America to be more free, this is the year that we have made it to the World Series. The way that we win is by getting each and every one of your votes. So who here has already early voted in Ohio for Gary Johnson? Thank you. For any of you that are still undecided voters, and I think you'll make up your mind here pretty soon when we have our next speaker come out, I ask that you go to the ballot and you vote with your conscience. You're about to hear from the presidential candidate with the most integrity, humility, and honesty that this country has ever seen. Before we bring him out, I have something I'd like to share with you. I brought my absentee ballot, and I am not an Ohio voter, so this is not illegal, so just so you know. So with the slightest mark of a pen, I'm about to cast my vote, and I'm about to represent my voice, the voice of the millennials. The media is going to tell you that the choice I'm about to make is a wasted vote.
Hell no!
Right? Votes are only wasted when they're not cast at all, or when they're cast out of fear that the lesser of two evils is going to get elected. I'm not afraid of that, and I'm not alone. I'm voting for Governors Gary Johnson and Bill Weld, and I'm going to do that while everybody's here with me. Does this look like a wasted vote to you? No. This is a vote for Governor Gary Johnson and Bill Weld. And I wish I could vote a few more times because that actually feels really good, but I can't because that's voter fraud. But each of you have a vote as long as you're above 18 and a registered voter. Your mom and dad, my parents are here. They each have one vote. Your friends have one vote. Your social network, your church congregations, your coworkers, and everybody that you know. They have to know why this is the year to vote for Gary Johnson. And together, we're going to make history. So can everybody please join me in welcoming the man that I just voted for, Governor Gary Johnson.
Oh, man. Oh, wow. Wow. Woo! Thank you. Oh, man. Oh. You honor me. Thank you. Thank you. So have you heard this before? First they ignore you, and they make fun of you, and they attack you, and then you win. Yeah. And look, if there's one takeaway today to all of you, we've won. We have won. This is a winning effort. This is an effort to change America, and it's to change America for the better. This is principled. You know that there are 6 major newspapers in this country that endorse myself and Bill Weld. And if I may summarize, those 6 major newspapers said, these guys may not win, but this is the principled vote in 2016. This is a vote for principle. These guys are talking about the issues as they need to be talked about. If you look forward, you're going to see candidates embrace what they're saying right now in the future. And in the future, you're going to look back on your vote and realize that you voted for principle, that you made a difference. And voting for the lesser of two evils does produce another evil. Vote for the person that you believe in. That's how you're going to change things in this country. And let's see, Clinton, Trump, who day? I mean, who day, right? Clinton, Trump, who day? The debates. What a disappointment not being in the debates. But hey, this is reality. This is the Presidential Debate Commission. This is the win here. This is part of the win is the emperor wears no clothes. Presidential Debate Commission, made up of Democrats and Republicans that absolutely have no intention whatsoever of seeing anyone other than a Democrat or a Republican on stage. Do you know what is shocking to me is that Ross Perot was polling less than I am right now when he was allowed into the presidential debates. Now, he was polling really high, he dropped out, but after he dropped out and came back in, he was polling lower, and both Clinton and Bush saw it as an advantage to have him in the debates. And so that's why he was in the debates. But after that, Presidential Debate Commission, 15%. It's really a chicken and egg thing. You can't get to 15% if you're not in the presidential debates. And if nothing else, hopefully this is the emperor wears no clothes and that this has to change going forward. I think in life, I think if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. It's a great way to live. And if you tell the truth, you admit mistakes, and there's no quicker way to fix mistakes than actually to recognize them in the first place. And I think the one unforgivable in life is hypocrisy. It's saying one thing and doing another. Bill Weld and I are not hypocrites. If these Hillary Clinton revelations, I mean, who could have dreamed that this was going to happen? Do you recognize how significant this is? The FBI dropped their investigation in July because they didn't want this to overhang the election. They didn't want to have a presidential candidate elected, Hillary Clinton, and be under federal investigation. That's why they did this in July. So to come back right now and say they're reopening the investigation says that this is significant. This is not insignificant. And come on, it doesn't take a crystal ball to realize that if Hillary Clinton is elected, she is going to be under federal investigation, something unprecedented, and the next 4 years is just going to be filled with impeachment smoke that's going to fill the room. There's no amount of ventilation that's going to remove that smoke from the room. And then on the other side, I mean, you got Trump, who I thought was toast. Right now, I think they're both toast, and I think there's an opportunity here to make a real statement, and the real statement is one for change, and it starts with integrity. It starts with honesty. Because, look at it, it's one thing. It's, Thank you. One bit of advice today to all of you, and the bit of advice to all of you is apply whatever it is that you know entrepreneurially. There is just not enough said to the notion of creating your own job, creating jobs for others. And I'll tell you what, government is making that harder and harder to do, but it could make it easier to do. Bill Weld and myself, as president and vice president, would make that endeavor easier. I really believe that the model of the future is the sharing economy. I really believe that the model of the future is Uber everything. It's eliminating the middleman. It's allowing for you and I, as the providers of goods and services, to directly give those goods and services to the end user, who will end up paying less because of no middleman, and because you're providing the goods and services, you'll end up making more because of elimination of the middleman. I really think Airbnb, I think we've just begun to see the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the sharing economy and the opportunity that is out there. Airbnb, I was talking to a young woman in Baltimore who'd gotten her who had gotten her degree in or doctorate in science. And she said, I have these horrible student debts, but I figured out a way to pay back these student debts. Airbnb. But the city of Baltimore stepped in and banned Airbnb. And this is what is happening all across the country. There's a banning of Airbnb, which is equal opportunity for everybody. It's Uber. It's the model of Uber, where it's equal opportunity for everybody. Look, this should be promoted. This should not be discouraged. So when it comes to jobs, it's certainty that I think that people really, that entrepreneurs look for. That taxes won't go up. That rules and regulations won't get any worse. In the 2012 cycle, Rick Perry was beating his chest that he created more jobs than anyone running for president in 2012. Well, they did an analysis, and actually it was Gary Johnson. And my response to it then, as it was when I was governor, I did not create one single job in New Mexico. Government doesn't create jobs, the private sector does. But you can create this environment of equal opportunity. I may have vetoed more bills than the other 49 governors in the country combined. A lot of that was crony capitalism. Crony capitalism, when government picks winners and losers, it's bought, it's paid for. Hillary Clinton clearly is out to sell it, and she sold it, and that's all this WikiLeaks stuff that's being released right now. It's horrible. It's the worst thing about government, and that's what Hillary Clinton is representing in all this. There is another choice, and it's not Donald Trump. Look, there's three. Thank you. There's three scenarios in this election, right? You elect Trump, you elect Clinton. That's scenario one, scenario two. Does anyone think that the polarity in Congress is going to get any better if they're elected? No way. They're both out to kill each other. That's the agenda that they have, kill one another. Then there's the third alternative. Weld and Johnson, libertarians, big 6-lane highway down the middle. Fiscally conservative, socially inclusive, skeptical regarding military interventions, regime change, and free market that are going to be non-political, hiring a non-partisan administration, Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians, and just stand back and say, come on, let's come to the table and deal with the issues that this country is facing. I think that third scenario is the only scenario that has the possibility of working. I agree with Donald Trump 100% on his number one issue in this campaign. I agree with Hillary Clinton 100% on her number one issue in this campaign. Don't vote for Trump and don't vote for Clinton. They're horrible. They're horrible. Keep government out of my bedroom and keep government out of my pocketbook. Fiscally conservative. What does that mean? Why have a balanced budget? A balanced budget is all about young people. That's a balanced budget. Young people right now are getting screwed. I'm gonna get my health care, I'm gonna get my retirement, and oh, by the way, young person, you're gonna have to pay for it, and good luck if it's around when you get old enough to collect on it. Oh, and then President Obama's affordable health care plan, dependent on young, healthy people paying for those that are older and not so healthy. And then young people, we're going to send you off to war. You're going to put your lives at risk in defense of nothing in American interests. We're going to put you in these civil wars that are just nuts, where our military is being caught in the crossfire. By the way, among active military personnel, I am the overwhelming choice to be the next president of the United States. Stop with support of regime change. It has never worked out. It's never worked out in my lifetime. So balanced budget, that means reform of the entitlements. Neither Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump are saying anything about reform of the entitlements. Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. It's not an option to say, let's do nothing in all of those categories. And actually, Hillary is saying, let's increase the benefits, Medicaid and Medicare. That is just not an option. when we continue to print money to cover expenses that we are not covering with revenue, the end result of this is going to be rampant inflation. It's going to be horrible inflation. And that is the worst tax of all, when all the money that you have in the bank is overnight worth a lot less money, that it buys a lot less. When you have the same goods and services being provided, and there's a whole lot more money out there regarding those goods and services, it's only going to result in higher prices. That is inflation. So addressing military, also, you can't balance the budget if you're not going to cut back on military spending, and we should have an invincible national defense. That's being the key word, defense. The Brack Commission in the mid-90s said we could close 25% more U.S. bases than have been closed, but there has not been the political will to get that done. If we don't address these problems are not going to fix themselves. And now I'm back to these newspapers that gave endorsement. Look, it's not an option to do nothing when it comes to the problems that we are facing. And somehow we think we're going to magically fix this at the 23rd hour. It's not going to happen. It needs to happen. It needs to start now. Donald Trump. When Donald Trump announced his candidacy, me being from New Mexico, a border state governor, and he said the things about immigration that he has said, I thought, this is going nowhere. Look, we should embrace immigration. We are a country of immigrants. We should make it as easy as possible for somebody that wants to come into this country and work to be able to get a work visa. And a work visa should entail a background check and a Social Security card so that taxes get paid. Don't put the government in charge of quotas. There will either be jobs or there won't be jobs, and the main reason why we have 11 million undocumented workers in this country is because quotas were set up. You couldn't get a work visa to cross over the border, and yet you saw jobs that existed that U.S. citizens didn't want, and if you or I were in the same position looking out for our families, we'd have done the same thing. And how is the crackdown of 11 million undocumented workers going to work in New Mexico, where half the population is Hispanic? It's going to be a knock on the door, let's see your papers. That is not the country that we live in. The country that we live in doesn't build walls across the border, we build bridges across the border. If there is one country that we ought to be strengthening our economic and diplomatic ties with, it should be Mexico. Free markets. I said this earlier. Free markets is the opposite of crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is when government picks winners and losers. It's for sale, and it doesn't have to be. Good government is easy. It's not hard. When I became governor of New Mexico known for its patron system, that government is for sale, it ended the day I took office. And it does. It's that simple. And it can end with a president who does not support crony capitalism, doesn't support government to the highest bidder, but supports government when it comes to equality for all. A president that would uphold the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the United States is a document that limits the power and scope of government. That is the Constitution. The Constitution was a protection from government. It was a protection against the tyranny of government against all of us. And the Bill of Rights is the Bill of Rights, first 10 amendments of the Constitution, protects the minority against the will of the majority. That's the country that we live in. I think that if term limits were in effect, that it would be a silver bullet. I think if term limits were in effect, politicians would do the right thing as opposed to whatever it takes to get reelected. If we had term limits, we would not have a $20 trillion debt today. And by the way, it doesn't seem like it makes any difference whether it's a Democrat in office or a Republican in office when it comes to growing government. Bush doubled the national debt. Obama's doubled the national debt. If Hillary is elected, it's going to go to $50 trillion, the rule of 72, because of the expansion of government that she wants to accomplish. And Trump is no different. Trump is just... The problem with Trump, or the certainty with Trump, certainty with Hillary Clinton, taxes are not going to go down. Government is going to play a bigger role in our lives. The answer to everything is going to be a new government program. And that our military interventions are going to continue. We bombed 7 Muslim countries last year. We're going to bomb 7 or more next year with Hillary Clinton at the helm. With Donald Trump as president, if there's one thing that's certain with Donald Trump as president, will be uncertainty. I have no idea where that guy stands on anything, and the things that he says that he wants to do. Applying a 35% tariff on imported goods, that sounds like real free market to me. Forcing Apple to make their iPads and their iPhones in the United States. And a 35% tariff. Who's going to pay for a 35% tariff on imported goods when currently imported goods are subject to about a 1.4% tariff? Well, you and I are going to pay that 35%. And immigration. The Wharton School of Business, let's see, that's Donald Trump's alma mater, Wharton School of Business, came out with a study about 8 weeks ago that said if we were to increase immigration in this country by 50%, that would have a big positive impact on the economy, because that would be people taking jobs, being productive, being a part of the economy. When you think about Social Security, when you think about the programs that we do have that need contribution, when you think about property values, when you think about opportunity in America and productivity, increasing immigration would add to our economy greatly. They also went on to say that restricting immigration would have a negative impact on our economy. Talking about free markets, talking about health care. What's the reform that's needed when it comes to health care? Well, the reform that's needed when it comes to health care is a free market approach to health care. And by the way, Healthcare is as far removed from free market as it possibly can be, all right? In a free market approach to healthcare, you and I would not have insurance to cover ourselves for ongoing medical need. That would be like having insurance to cover oil changes for our cars. We would have insurance to cover ourselves for catastrophic injury and illness, and we would pay as you go in a system that would be incredibly affordable. Catastrophic injury and illness, much like collision insurance, or that someone gets hurt or killed driving your car. But competition, bringing competition to healthcare, something that government could play a role in, blowing the lid off of the supply of doctors, advertised pricing, advertised outcomes. Look, right now, when we go to the doctor, we have no idea what it's going to cost. The person at the desk has no idea what it's going to cost. I had a radiologist come up to me after a rally in Albuquerque. He said, I've been a radiologist for 20 years. I have no idea what I charge. I have no idea. Advertised pricing, advertised outcomes. I think the cost for healthcare would be about 1/5 of what it currently is. I think we would have gallbladders are us. I think we'd have stitches are us. I think we'd have x-rays are us. We would have advertised pricing. We would have advertised outcomes. I think having health insurance for ongoing medical need would be like having grocery insurance. Why don't we have grocery insurance in this country? And just for a second, grocery insurance. How do you like the concept? Going into the grocery store, there's no prices on any of the aisles. You have no idea but you have grocery insurance, so it really doesn't matter. And when it comes to ground round or sirloin fillets, well, fillets every single time. That would be the grocery experience insurance. That would be that phenomenon. Bring competition to health care. And President Obama's Affordable Health Care Act. My insurance premiums have quadrupled. I haven't been to see a doctor in 3 years, and that's not completely true because I actually had to go to a doctor to get a physical to say that I'm actually fit enough to be president of the United States. There are some departments that need to be abolished in Washington, D.C. How about let's start with Ohio giving the federal government 13 cents. Ohio gives the Department of Education 13 cents, and then the Federal Department of Education gives Ohio back 11 cents. What a great bargain that was. And then they say that you have to do A, B, C, D to get your 11 cents. Well, it costs Ohio 15 cents to accomplish the 11 cents, so why not just leave the 6 cents in Ohio's pockets in the first place, one of 50 laboratories of innovation, and that we would actually have some fabulous success when it comes to education, doing it by a state-by-state basis, as opposed to the federal government getting involved. Housing and urban development, hasn't that long outlived its usefulness? The Department of Commerce, isn't that laden with crony capitalism? And there's some things that probably need to survive, like patent rights, intellectual property, but the entire Department of Commerce, I think that's all about a pay to play. I really do. And then Homeland Security. The combination of 22 different agencies, why did they leave their home to begin with? And why is it that government doesn't make any mistakes when it comes to their decisions, yet private business makes mistakes all the time and they have to fess up to it? Back to the Department of Education, I think people think that the Department of Education was established under George Washington. The Department of Education was established under Jimmy Carter. Has there been anything value added since the Department of Education was established? I don't think so. Personal choice. Libertarians, always coming down on the side of personal choice. You and I should be able to make decisions in our own lives, period, as long as those decisions don't harm others. That's where government has a role. So, you're too nice. Too nice. Marriage equality. I think that is something that is constitutionally guaranteed. Look, abortion. How can there be a more difficult choice in anyone's life? And when I say anyone's life, the woman involved. How can there be a more difficult choice for the woman involved as to the circumstances and everything that goes along with that? But who but the woman involved should be making that choice? Only the woman involved should be making that choice. And you've done it here partially in Ohio, thank you very much, but we need to legalize marijuana in this country. We have the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world. We have 2.3 million people behind bars in this country, and the basis for those 2.3 million people behind bars is the war on drugs. We need to end the war on drugs. The number one, did you read last week, the number one category of arrest in this country over the last 12 months is marijuana? That is the number one category of arrest. Half of law enforcement, half the courts, and half the prisons, half of what they spend, half the resources that they put out there have to do with drugs. And to what end? Well, we do have the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world. I do not think that this country has ever been better. I think we communicate with one another better. I think we get along with one another better. I think our kids are smarter than ever, but we do have some issues. One of those issues right now is all lives matter, but black lives matter. And black lives matter because there is discrimination that is taking place. I think we're going to come to grips with this discrimination, the recognition, because it's got to start with recognition. And once we recognize it, why then we can work to remedy it. And I'm believing that we are going to remedy this more effectively and better than any time in the history of our country. When the number one law enforcement tool in this country are the smartphones that we have, this is a good time to be alive. And it really is a good time to be alive. I support the Second Amendment to the Constitution, a right to bear arms, but you know what? I support all 10 amendments. I support the Bill of Rights. There's some constitutional amendments that I wish we could do away with. One would be repealing the income tax. I think that would be a good one. Another would be the direct election of senators, which if we didn't have the 17th Amendment, I don't think we'd have a $20 trillion debt either. But regarding guns, look, we should be open to a discussion and a debate on how we keep guns out of the hands of the mentally ill. We need to be open to that debate and discussion. And we need to be open to a debate and a discussion on how we keep guns out of the hands of would-be terrorists. As President of the United States, I would love to know what transpired between the FBI and the shooter in Orlando. I'd love to know what transpired between the FBI and the bomb maker in New York. Clearly, the system is working up to a certain point, but at a certain point, it's not working. Is it a matter of more resources? Look, some areas of government, most areas of government need to be cut, but other areas need to have, if it's an issue of added resource, well, let's add resources to make this happen. But like I say, that's why I'm seeking the office of President of the United States. I think I was born with an overdose of common sense and really get into the middle of these issues, and that common sense would prevail. I mentioned earlier that we're leading among active military personnel, which is really a big deal. So let me say something about Aleppo. And let me start by saying, okay, so you can't dot the I's and you can't cross the T's on the names of foreign leaders or geographic locations, and that somehow disqualifies you from an overall sense of what's going on. Because you can dot the I's and cross the T's on the names of foreign leaders and geographic locations, that qualifies you to put the military in harm's way. That qualifies you to arguably put hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians in these countries that we go in and occupy in harm's way. Well, I reject that. It's one thing to have a gawk. It's one thing to have a gawk on something like that. It's another thing to have honesty and integrity and have that rule as opposed to the latter. So let's just for a second, and if I get any of this wrong, all right, correct me, but let's just for a second look at Syria at the moment. So Syria, the west side of Aleppo is Assad. And on the east side of Aleppo, you've got the Free Syrian Army, which we support. And we supported with arms. But when we supported them with arms, and this was Hillary Clinton and this was Barack Obama, there was all sorts of conjecture that those arms were going to end up in the hands of the Islamists, which the Free Syrian Army is allied with the Islamists. But we're not allied with the Islamists. We're at war with the Islamists. And yes, the arms did end up in the hands of the Islamists, and the arms ended up in the hands of ISIS in Raqqa. And let's talk about Raqqa for a second. So Raqqa, arguably, ISIS was organized by Saddam's henchmen who had to flee Iraq because of our invasion of Iraq. So they all go to Raqqa, they organize ISIS. We're supporting the Kurds against ISIS, but the Kurds are not being supported at all by Turkey, our once really good ally, who aren't such a good ally anymore because of our invasion of Iraq. And before any of this started, Bush was actually giving resources to Assad to fight the Islamists before any of this started. And this is what we're doing with our foreign policy. Let's get ourselves out of these unwinnable situations. If we are attacked, we should attack back. And the answer to Syria is joining hands with Russia to solve this diplomatically. There is no other solution available. As to the solution in North Korea, the only way to deal with North Korea is to join arms with China to deal with that diplomatically. We should attack when we should defend ourselves against attack. So an example of that, Afghanistan. I completely supported Afghanistan in 2001 when we went in as a result of being attacked by Al-Qaeda. But after we were in Afghanistan for 7 months, we wiped out Al-Qaeda. We should have gotten out of Afghanistan 15 years ago. We should have gotten out of Afghanistan. We could have left the options open to come in to deal with Assad, but here it is. We are there 15 years later, and for all of the consequences, the bad consequences about getting out of Afghanistan tomorrow will exist 10 years from now, 20 years from now, or I guess for some, we're going to be there for eternity. Let's get out of Afghanistan. Iraq, on the other side, was going in and trying to implement regime change, something that has never succeeded in my lifetime. I can't think of one example where regime change has succeeded. So in 2003, after I left the office of being governor, I was asked about the impending invasion of Iraq. And my response was, look, we have the military surveillance capability to see Iraq roll out any weapons of mass destruction. If they do that, there are all sorts of options available. But if we invade Iraq, we're going to find ourselves in a civil war to which there will be no end, and we are involved there in a civil war that apparently will have no end. Let's stop support of regime change. Based on what I know, and what I know about Edward Snowden is that Edward Snowden released a whole lot of information that enlightened all of us with regard to the government and its spying on all of us. And based on what I know is that he released that information to major media outlets, that he was not going to be responsible. He didn't have the resources. He did not have the ability to release any of this information because he was very concerned about putting anyone in harm's way. To my knowledge, no one has been put in harm's way as a result of this because of the way that he did all this. Based on what I know, I would pardon Edward Snowden. Turn the satellites away from you and I as U.S. citizens. There is a process in this country, it's called due process, to be able to get a search warrant, to be able to monitor someone who is suspected of something, but that is not all of us having all of our data secured by the U.S. government. Turn the satellites away from you and I as U.S. citizens. I'm going to make a pledge that as President of the United States, I will be the most frugal president ever elected in your lifetime. I make that promise. You can't do this if you're not going to lead by example, and I did it as governor of New Mexico. One of the things I did as governor of New Mexico that I know of no other governor that did this for 8 years is I had an open door after 4 program in New Mexico. Anybody in the state of New Mexico on the 3rd Thursday of every month could come and visit with me as governor starting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon until 10 o'clock in the evening on 5-minute increments. I was able to affect a lot of change. It wasn't just for the individual involved, but it was probably dozens or hundreds of others that were adversely affected by the stories that so many had to tell. When I saw what was happening in Flint, Michigan, and I'll take at his word the fact that the governor of Michigan didn't know what was happening, but in New Mexico, that could not have happened. I had a mechanism in place where I would have known about Flint, Michigan, and I would have fixed what was happening in Flint, Michigan. As President of the United States, I'm also pledging to have an open door after 4 policy as President of the United States. And I'm also pledging, fix it for one, you probably fix it for thousands when it comes to the federal government, but also pledging that my entire cabinet is also going to be a part of conducting open door after 4. This is the coolest venue of all the rallies that we've had. Woo! Woo! A pitch to all of you. Hey, there are 11 days to go. Getting people to vote for who they should vote for, and by that I do mean Bill Weld and myself. That's how we're going to change things. So I just really a pitch to all of you. Redouble your efforts. Redouble your efforts that you just have a look at Gary Johnson and Bill Weld. Redouble your efforts that how about get online and take that political quiz isidewith.com and find out that you probably pair up with Bill Weld and Gary Johnson running for president and vice president. Thank you all very, very, very much for being out here. Really, you all rock. Thank you. Thank you.